security, and transparency. Today, they will be presenting their Udhaharans. It's like a best practice example, and they will showcase their efforts toward creating a safer and more secure online world. We are very excited to hear from them and to learn from them. We have with us today Ms. Felista Aku, Mr. Noel Goribo, Ms. Marcel Froussard, Mr. Dayalan Chetty, Mr. Odette Magalit, Ms. Lindy Bafula, and Mr. Micha Weiss. Let's give them a warm applause. In the light of time, each CSO will have 5 to 6 minutes to present their Udhaharan. As we're a little bit tight on schedule, we'll have to see at the end how much time we'll have for questions, but we will definitely try our best. And with further ado, let me welcome the first speaker, Ms. Felista Aku.
Good evening, everyone. I'm back in your face again, this time for the last time. Thank you for the opportunity to present on some of the best practices regarding a couple of conversations that we've been having at the course of this meeting. To provide a quick background, we are AfriLabs. We are a network of innovation hubs in Africa, and currently we have over 400 hubs spread across 52 African countries. Hubs are basically centers that provide various forms of support to entrepreneurs, everything from providing physical co-working space to incubation or acceleration program, mentorship, coaching, access to investment opportunities, and the likes. Our vision is a thriving innovation economy in Africa driven by the power of our community, and our mission is to support innovation hubs and their communities to raise high potential entrepreneurs. In terms of what we do, this has been categorized into 4 areas. First is around ecosystem engagement and capacity building, under which we facilitate access to talent, learning and development, policy advocacy, and the like. Second is corporate engagement, where we work with corporate organizations like Intel. Third is around research and development, and then the fourth is around consulting and advisory. I want to really get into the crux of this conversation. So yes, last year, during our annual gathering in Zambia, we launched the 10 policy pathways. So the AfriLabs policy pathways highlight the voices of innovators, entrepreneurs, and hubs across Africa on the 10 policy priorities all parties, governments, multilateral organizations, development agencies, and businesses must address in order to establish a framework that will foster innovation, entrepreneurship, and the digital economy for job creation. It will also guide the collaboration between AfriLabs and other stakeholders. I have this word from our executive director, Anna Ikeledo. She says, we are now at a change point where policymakers and other technology industry stakeholders must consider the opportunity cost of an uncertain and incoherent environment. So here are the 10 policy pathways. For the sake of time, I'm just going to mention them quickly. The first is around to promote digital skills for inclusion and employment. I think that has been part of what we've been discussing in the last 2 days, talking about the digital divide and how to, bridge the digital gap. Second is to encourage entrepreneurship and startups through legislation. This cannot be overemphasized. There are a lot of policies that are anti-innovation, anti-technology, anti-entrepreneurship. So we have to look into that. The third is creating an enabling environment to attract investment. This is to create a system that works for investors, especially investors who invest at the very early stages of businesses. Number 4 is to adopt pro-innovation tax policies. 5th is to enable an inclusive digital payment ecosystem. Number 6 is to commit to AFCFTA and open intra-Africa digital trade. The 7th is to preserve digital rights and access to digital infrastructure. Number 8 is to promote innovative use of data. 9, build research and development capacity and protect IP, that's intellectual property. And then the last, not the least, is to simplify public procurement for innovation. So we need to remove barriers to technology and innovation creation and adoption, obviously. And we have to co-create an inclusive and an enabling environment for innovation and entrepreneurship to thrive. So how do we do this? How do we achieve all of this? Number 1, like I mentioned during my panel yesterday, is partnerships. We have to leverage existing policy work and assets and enable specialized partnerships. I've had conversations with specific stakeholders at the course of this meeting that I'm hoping to have further conversations with to see how we can begin to take steps towards any of the 10 policy pathways that we've talked about. Number 2 is empowerment. We have to work with hubs and other ecosystem support organizations and members to develop grassroots policy capabilities that can scale and maximize the network weight. Leadership. We need to lead public policy initiatives that promote relevant changes at the national, Pan-African, and then, of course, global level. Yeah, I'm not just in Africa at this time. So advocacy pillars. So we need to build coalitions, integrate with hubs and partners to accelerate, change that we want to see. Thank you. I think, yes. Thank you for your time. 5 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and also thank you for keeping the time. May I now invite Noel Koivu on stage for his presentation.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. Okay, what I'm going to talk about today is, for me, the biggest problem of 2023. It's not a problem that I could have spoken about last year. I'm going to be talking about this situation here. There's been an explosion of proposed regulations in the last year. You can see on the graph here, this comes from IEEE. I think the numbers here are approximately 127 new bills that happened on that particular curve there. And what's difficult about this is that regulations are inherently political. There's a lot of pressures, there's a lot of lobbies, and what happens is a fragmentation. There'll be different values that are permeating in different legislation, so we will not be able to achieve easily the mission statement here, which is for one world. We're actually going to be creating more fragmentation and more divergences in terms of what is expected when we're building AI systems. So we need to address this. And the uniqueness of this is that, unlike the ethics journey that we had as civil society, where there was a general consensus around what are those ethical principles, we're finding that in the regulatory space, those kinds of low-hanging fruits are not evident. So I'm going to speak about a couple best practices that Canada did, as we approach this. And there's a unique opportunity because the moment's now for this, right? Like, these proposals are in development. They're not law yet. This is the time for influencers. This is the time for you to be change agents and to get in there and try to find a way to harmonize and mobilize, the strategy towards something that's more aligned to the one world vision. So how do we do this, right? We look for low-hanging fruits. One of the opportunities here that we see that's kind of common in the various regulations is this idea of standards and conformity assessments. There's a lot of international talk right now as to what AI standards could look like. This is a prime opportunity for civil society to start getting in there, start shaping that discussion, like what would AI standards look like? Meaningful consultation, right? Right now, a lot of these regulations are being, designed in small, closed boardrooms. We need to open this up, right? I talk about open source policymaking, right? Open by default. It's one of the most successful ways that Canada did to get meaningful stakeholder engagements. We worked in the open. We were able to identify the people that wanted to follow us, definitely promote, you know, an approach that enables real-time views as to what's happening, and really promotes transparency, and it actually demonstrates a lot of thought leadership. So this is a strategy that is tried and true. And so if you're around that table and you have the opportunity to influence, definitely push, you know, open by default. Same thing with the policy-making process itself is broken, right? It takes forever to create laws and policies. Part of AI is about creating new ways of working. So challenge the functions. Look at different ways. What are the barriers within the process that's really slowing this down? I'll give you an example within Canada of small steps that we've done to reduce the barriers. But refresh mechanisms, right? Like one of the reasons why policies and laws take so long is because people are afraid that if they make mistakes, they won't be able to course correct. It usually takes, you know, years, and there's usually set time, like this will be reviewed in 3 years. That has to go, right? Even before you start the content, like look at ways that you can create those refresh mechanisms and say, look, we're not gonna get this right. We don't really know what we're talking about, but if we have the mechanisms within our process to adapt and correct, there'll be a greater openness to actually start developing those policies and laws. So definitely the challenge function is a key component. And another thing that we did in Canada, again, it's a journey, right, within your own particular context, but the approval processes, right? Like where does the approvals happen? Can you start changing and rethinking the way that policies are approved? So these are just examples of what Canada did, but the idea here is to really look at that process and accelerate, because the current way, the machinery of government and policymaking itself won't be able to meet the speed. So that's what I recommend to civil society. Definitely get into the regulatory space, look at standards, look at processes, and open by default rulemaking is my recommended best practice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I now ask Marcelle Fossard to come on stage for her presentation.
Hi. Hi. In Brazil, always when we open some kind of a presentation, we say to the students, hi, and they say, hi. So, hi. It's the last one, so I think that everyone is tired. So, I will talk about public funding for technology as mechanisms to prevent the privatization of education. But before, I will talk about the Brazil, because when I was talking with people here, I think that's a little different country and we have some difference. To know the distance that I travel. It's here is a geographical presentation from Brazil to India. And here are some data of Brazil. And I think it's interesting to say that we are the 5th largest country in the world, and by land area, and our first language is Portuguese. And Brazilian Linguistic Diversity Group showed that there are more than 2,000 languages in Brazil. So when I saw people talking about the problems of communication and EI, I think it's very important to understand the reality of Brazil. So we are the richest 10% in Brazil earn 40% of the national income. So we are a very disequally country. So the same study indicates that the poorest people in the country, around 4.5 million people, live on just 100 reais. It's like less than $30 a month. And the interesting data, it's about what I will talk about to you today. It's that around You say the number. 85% of Brazilian students study in public schools, so it's a lot. And public education is maintained with resources from the Brazilian state in the school and in the universities and in the post-graduation. So this is the reality of schools in Brazil. We have a lot of kinds of schools. We have the indigenous schools and the rural schools, the urban schools, and the schools that is in the interior of the country, and it's a big reality, and all of the schools are related to the state. So they are the professors, the teachers, the infrastructure, everything is maintained by the Brazilian state. It's the best school of the world? No, we have a lot of problems, but this school is free, and they are in all the country. So I will come back now. Who is the Brazilian Campaign for the Right to Education, who I'm representing here? We are a big network of social movements in Brazil, and our objective was to unite different political forces, prioritizing actions of mobilization, political pressure, and media in favor of the defense and promotion of education rights, especially public education. So, the campaign's mission is to act for the implementation and the expansion of educational policies, so that all people have guaranteed the right to public, free, inclusive, secular, and quality education in Brazil. Secular, to us, is really important because we have a lot of religions in Brazil, too. So to guarantee that all people have these schools, we need to have a secular school. Okay. Our mission is to act for the effectiveness and expansion of policies education. So we are now, and in our history, thinking about adequate public fundings, and this is a very large campaign that we are participating, and we did some big mobilization in the internet in 2020 that approved a big fund, public fund for education in the universities and in the schools. And what's our main projects? It's advocacy at the national level. It's the most part of our work. And participation in civil society spaces, such as the National Education Forum. There is a lot of social spaces in Brazil that civil society can participate and do the advocacy with the state. So, legislative follow-up and political advocacy to guarantee the right to education. And we have three main projects: invisible childhood and adolescence, diagnosis, student participation, observatory of ultraconservadorismo. All these projects are based on researches, and why we are talking about ultraconservatism or extremism, because in Brazil it's a political problem. And education and technology. It's a really new theme for us, and it came because we recognize the importance of the debate on the education and technology, and believe that it should be guided by the following principles: use of technologies to support the education process under the principles of cyber and data security and open educational resources, respect the Abidjan principles, participation of civil society and the education community, which includes democratic management of process, promotion of transparency, democratic management, and public cooperation. The Brazilian Campaign for the Right to Education is part of the Privatization of Education Human Rights Consortium. So we are working in this area, and we think it's really important that privatization of education, it's necessary to regulate the role of the private sector in education and in technology. And when we talk about the education in Brazil and technology, we are seeing the presence of we call GAFAM, in the secondary education reform and the curriculum reform in Brazil. They are examples of actions that make education precarious and open space for privatization process, including investments in technology. So, the Brazilian context of investment in technology for education is that, according to the last school census, one in 5 Brazilian public schools does not have access to the internet, and half of them do not provide any computer or device for students. It's a poor reality when we think about the technology. So this is an example of study that we participate, Supervised Education Observatory, and the red spots are the presence of Google and Microsoft in the South America. Brazil is the one there, and there is in all the country. So that's the idea. Really thank you, and it's a really time stay here with you.
Thank you so much, Marcel. I'd now like to invite Dayalan Chetty on stage.
Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. And I think for those of you who have attended some of the other sessions, you will know by now that I am from South Africa. I should have borrowed, make it higher? Okay. Is that a bit better? Okay. I should have borrowed Marcelo's map to show you exactly where South Africa is, but I think you know because we share the same ocean. And yeah, and it's been a pleasure for me to be here with you over these last 2 days. It has really been an eye-opener for me, and it's interesting to see the global perspective and also the Indian perspective in particular with respect to technology and how you think about technology and technology transformation in such a deep manner. So not taking things for granted or not taking things at a superficial level. So as I mentioned, I work for an organization in South Africa called the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, the CSIR. You also have a CSIR in India, so some of you will be familiar with the work that the CSIR does. The CSIR in South Africa was formed in 1945, and it's really a parastatal that focuses on research and development. And we conduct research and development in a number of different disciplines. So we're called a multidisciplinary research institute. And the purpose really behind the work that we do at the CSIR is to broadly try to improve through technology the quality of life of the people of South Africa. So my field in particular is around information and communications technologies. I lead a group in the CSIR which is called e-government. And what we're trying to do is to introduce digital transformation amongst a number of government departments in South Africa to essentially help with increasing the capability of the state and also improving service delivery to our citizens. So that's really where I come from. We have quite a number of projects that we are doing which seeks to improve government service delivery. In the health sector, I think I spoke about some of those projects yesterday. In the education sector, around rural development, also in terms of monitoring our oceans and coasts to make sure that they are safe. But I think given the discussions of the last 2 days, I thought it might be useful to just share on one specific project which I think is very relevant to what we've been discussing over the last two days. And it relates to indigenous knowledge. And when we speak about indigenous knowledge currently in South Africa, mainly I'm talking about traditional foods and traditional medicines at this point in time. And there's two problems that we identified together with our Department of Science and Innovation. One of them is that as the generations are growing, we are also losing a lot of our younger people into urban settings, and they're also becoming more westernized. I think that came out a lot during the conversations of the last couple of days, even here in India. So we are at the risk of actually losing our traditional knowledge, our indigenous knowledge. That's the first problem that we've identified. The second one is that we have instances in South Africa where people have been using a specific plant, for example, to cure certain diseases for hundreds of years, and in certain communities. And then you have big pharmaceutical companies coming along and saying, okay, we can use that, put it into a specific product and making lots of money out of it, but there's nothing that goes back to the local community in terms of their intellectual property at the end of the day. So that's the second problem that we identified. The one is related to the risk of losing our traditional or indigenous knowledge. And the second is that we're losing the protection over that indigenous knowledge and actually being exploited by external companies. So one of the things that we've done, and I'm just going to talk about this one project only, with our Department of Science and Innovation, is to develop an information system that allows us to collect traditional or indigenous knowledge in the form of traditional foods and traditional medicines and place them onto a central database in a manner that is curated and in a manner where communities where this information is collected can actually still lay claim to any commercial value that comes out of those systems. Now, that's a little bit on the technical side in terms of how we got that done, but what I want to focus on is we've, over the years, managed to establish in all 9 provinces in South Africa what we call indigenous knowledge district centers. And this was in partnership with universities that actually reside in those provinces. But even further than that, through those universities and their relationships with the community-based organizations, we've managed to recruit more than 100 individuals at a community level that their job is essentially to go from community to community and physically record claims of traditional or indigenous knowledge. So they are equipped with computers, with laptops, with cameras, with video cameras. They are collecting images, they are collecting documents, they are collecting videos, and all of this comes back into the central database where it is, first of all, there are processes that we adopt in terms of actually checking whether this is a relevant claim or not. And if it is, then it goes and it is curated there. I need to finish, but maybe let me finish by saying that to date, through that process, we've already managed to collect more than 30,000 pieces of traditional knowledge. And that is now safe for future generations, and it's also adequately protected for those communities from whence we've got them. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
I now welcome Oded Magali.
Okay, hi. Let me start. What I'm going to talk today is about my view about AI ethics and regulations. First of all, something about myself. I'm pure mathematics in my first degree, so I love mathematics and riddles. If you want to hear about my view about science, go to this link. It's a very nice caricature of why mathematics is the most important thing in the world. I also did some research in the industry at IBM research division on machine learning, optimization, formal verification, and cybersecurity, and more. And I worked for Citibank, which is a very large and heavily regulated financial institute, so I have my scars from regulations. The first item is you can regulate whatever you want, but be careful, because only law-abiding people are abiding this regulation. So if you, the technology has left the barn, people can write their own machine learning algorithms, even if they are regulated. If you are a criminal, you can bypass that wants to use it for malicious purposes like ransomware or phishing or whatever. You can might as well break another law of using AI. But if you are a law-abiding rule, then not. The second line is anyone who knows mathematics knows that if A is included in B, two sets, then the maximal value of A is no more than the maximal value of B. Meaning that if we handcuff our hands and say that we don't use AI, we get suboptimal solutions. So the good guys, by throwing away some of the opportunities, will get bad solutions. And there is something, you can look it up, Cobra effect. What happens when you have very good intentions and something bad happens, and regulations tends to go that way. And one example is somebody stole from Twitter a few hundred million accounts, and he actually blackmailed Elon Musk, saying that the GDPR will cost you much more, I'm willing to sell you it for half the price. So actually what the GDPR did is created a market to invade privacy. They wouldn't have done it otherwise, but after the EU asking, they did it. Another important thing that I say is that you should be technology neutral. There is, again, you can read the law of the horse. Somebody had created a lot of horse-specific rules, and then the judge said, you should not. If you want to say that you should not put manure on the street, that's okay, you should not do it, but if you are a horse or another thing that polluted the street, you should be handled the same way. So if we want to, for example, to say that things should not be biased, then artificial intelligence should not be treated otherwise than natural stupidity. Both should ban biasing. People say that AI creates new things. So it's not new that things are new. The first privacy ruling in the US court was in the 19th century about taking a picture. Before inventing the digital mobile camera, you have to sit down for hours or to have a very cumbersome way of taking a picture. And then in the mid-19th century, somebody invented a very portable camera, and he went into the street, into a public space, and took a picture. And of course, the court has to decide, was it a privacy invasion activity, taking a picture of somebody in a public open space. So what I say is that that's okay. The camera created a new question, but the answer should not be camera specific. It should be either you should or should not take information from the public space, and the camera is just a simple example. Another example of forward thinking is we have in Israel a law that every public company has to have, which has at least 10 people in the directorate, has to have one of each gender. Now, the law didn't say you should have a female, but it was called in Hebrew the law of the female directorate, because that's what it really is, practically is. But saying it correctly, meaning that in the future you will solve the problem that hasn't come yet of the other way, the other bias. The last slide is talking about innovation solutions. I have two. One is algorithmic transparency. Instead of proving that your your algorithm is free of bias, you show that you developed it the right way, so in order to avoid bias. And the last one is if you're looking for a very good teaching material. A friend of mine is having the how to teach responsible AI. It's a very interesting course, and it will help you in deciding what what kind of ethics you would like. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I now welcome Lindy Wafula on stage.
Jambo, jambo, jambo. This is Lindy Wafula from Kenya. I wish to share with you why I started Village Ventures International. I hope it will give you some encouragement. Ikelele iyo, yelele mama, ikelele iyo, yelele mama, ikelele iyo, 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 yelele mama, ikelele iyo, yelele mama, ma, oh mama, do not leave me, ma. Desperate, lonely, and confused. Don't let death take you. Fight for your rights, ma. Oh dear, come back. I'm left with memories of the past and responsibilities of the future. Alas, alas, all that starts well ends well. Pure blasphemy, lies, nonsense. For it all began well with Papa and Mama sailing in the same ship with a gorgeous wedding. Flowers, presents, songs, and most of all, a wedding ring. Those were the happy moments. The second celebration after birth. Gone is the day, and coming back, it won't. What does a man want? What wins a man? I'll be glad to know. I will search for an answer. Down the valleys, up the mountains, across the bridges, and now in the internet, until lastly, I get. Dad never came home late. Never, unless with a reason. Then bang, it began. Coming home late, drunk, annoyed, hot tempers everywhere. Dear Paul could say, ma, please, the children, what will they say? We need to be a good example for, but before she could finish, power was on her. Woman, woman, mind your own business. What have I to do with daughters, women, wives? Shut your beak, or else the gate is open. But Paul, did you hear me? Out. Like the donkey, the beast of burden, her pleas went with the wind. It was slaps, kicks, and all those. Leaving Ma rejected and lonely, with no one to turn to, only her children who cried and mourned with her. Then came the second wife, the star of Africa. Her lips clotted with blood, with fried hair and painted nails. Moreover, with a tube-like skirt. Who could turn and look at Ma and turn and look at Papa and speak to him in a foreign language? And they laughed, sending tricks of fear in Ma's spine. Not a month later, the whole left Pa in hospital, in bed, with no one to turn to, only her children who cried and mourned with her. AIDS, AIDS, you are not meant for us. Go to where you came from. No one invited you, and none needs you in our midst. Go. Yelele mama, ikelele iyo. Yelele mama. And here is Ma again, leaving me with the children to feed, to clothe, to educate, and to comfort. Lord, why should I suffer so? Why should I go through all this? Take this cup of suffering away. Lord, how should I appease you? Which sacrifice do you need? Only to return Papa and Mama and promise to murder AIDS. Mama, may God rest your soul in peace. Bye. Ma, thank you. That is the story of my life. I wrote that poem when I was 14 years old, when I lost my mama and my papa to HIV/AIDS. As I conclude, because my time is over, you probably are asking, Lindy, are you a millionaire? I have just received an email right now. I am in India, but I got this email. Kindly, Lindy, I can hardly put food on the table. This has caused grievous violence from my man. As we speak, I have a swollen upper side of my face. I am planning to visit a rehab center and see if I can have, they can have me as a volunteer staff and possibly refer me to some safe house. Otherwise, as it is now, I can't report to the police because when I go to, after I report, I have to have him summoned. Nitaenda wapi? Nitaenda wapi in Swahili? It means, where shall I go? Please, if you may help me get some food, he doesn't need to box me tonight. And also, get fare to the organization tomorrow. I'll be grateful. Judy. A story from a woman just has come to me today, this afternoon at 1 o'clock. Lindy is not a millionaire, but Lindy has the compassion of the women, of the youth, and of all. How can you help? You are a friend, you can be a partner. Donate to Village Ventures. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lindy. And now I hand over to Micha Weiss for the very last presentation of today.
First, it was very emotional presentation, and thank you very much for that. The second one, I'm the last, so I need to go back to cyber a bit. But you are here for the last one, so I would like to share with you some idea about cybersecurity and how G20 countries, in my opinion, I will try to give some ideas how to promote the defensive approach about cybersecurity. Before I will start, my name is Micha Weiss. I'm working for the Ministry of Finance in Israel, and also do some mentoring with startup on the cybersecurity area, and it's fun for the last, I think, 35 years. So, to my idea to the G20 countries and the CSO, and I think it's fit for a lot of organizations. First, as you all know, the threat is global. It's not limited to a country or to organization. It's happened to all of us. But as a country, there is some countries that have the ability, they have the infrastructure, they have the structure to do whatever I talked about it, but there is some that can take some ideas. If there is a country that have it, improve it. If you don't, build it. It's part of the adventure to be more secure. So the first one, it's needed to be built a national infrastructure and procedure and the relationship between all the ministries inside the country and between the private market and the governmental entities. It's crucial to be in touch and to see how we can build it together. It's very important to build some kind of ecosystem. The ecosystem is built, again, from governmental entities, private entities, and CISOs as example. And of course, everybody together that have the same goal can build an ecosystem that contain also CISOs, also startup, organization, private market, governmental entities, all together can combine some kind of ecosystem that go to the same direction. It's very important to share information. We call it sharing is caring. It's our slogan. And I think it's the baseline to start with. Share information between government to the private market, between organizations of the same sector, between startup, between companies, cyber companies, etc., etc. It's very, very crucial because the cyber attack happened very, very quickly, and the sharing, it's very crucial to do some mitigation to the cyber attack. About critical infrastructure, each country needs to map and point about the critical infrastructure that they have, again, do some kind of mandatory regulation. And mandatory regulation, I mean that it should be every critical organization in the country should have a mandatory regulation. It's not, nice to have, because if you look about the energy sector or the financial sector, there is some kind of points that if they fail, country can fail. So it's not something simple. It's very, very important to map all the influence between organizations to build your critical infrastructure, the map of the critical infrastructure, and do a mandatory regulation on them. About cybercrime, again, it's one of the, I think, first priority for these times. It's a lot of frauds happened around the digital and the ecosystem. And if country would like to fight on digital fraud, it should be again together. Law enforcement, governmental officers, private market, organization, and citizen, of course. If the information will not be together in immediate time, it will not happen. Because when it's happened to a citizen, it's happened to an organization. If they keep them themselves, nobody knows. So, but if you gather the information and you see the movement and you see the pattern of the fraud, you can do some mitigation on a national level. Supply chain, very, very important. In these 2 days, my daily job, I used to use the word supply chain every 2 sentences, and it's crucial again to see the ecosystem, because the supply chain is the base of the organization. And I don't know any organization that don't use tons of supply chain company, and they are not regulated. So again, if we need to see the impact, if we need to see and understand what it's all about, all the market should be together. And we, as a country, need to map our supply chain, critical supply chain companies, and again, give them some mandatory regulation. I finish. I think for the last one, again, I will repeat some sentences I mentioned before in the last 2 days. It's again crucial, and I will summarize my ideas here, to do the collaboration between organization level, sectorial level, national level, and international level together. This is all about ecosystem. If all of us will work together, and country share information and work together, and organization work together, and CISOs work together, share information, understand the situation, together, one word as a slogan of this conference, so we can also be the light. So thank you very much, and I enjoyed these 2 days. Thank you.
A big thank you to all of the participants, but especially to our esteemed speakers. It was wonderful and inspiring to listen to you and all of the important work that you do. We have received many more examples from CSOs, but in the light of time, we are not going to present them now, but you will find them on our various TST C20 platforms, and you're very welcome to come and have a look. We now invite you to stay for a short time for a CSO training sessions, and afterwards, we kindly invite you to come down for the valedictorian event at 5:30 p.m. downstairs to close the summit. Thank you very much.